Hey, buddy.
Hey,
How are you?
doing well. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. You hear
Good.
me?
I hear you fine. It's so good to see you, my friend.
Likewise. Likewise. I think I'm going to change my background to be more what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I'm gonna do the same. Let's
How
see.
you been?
I'm doing well, my friend. I've got let's see. Hold on one second. I'm trying to.
Is that coming across right? Can you read that the right way?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just never know if it's backwards when I look at it, right? So
Yeah. Let's see. That's not
there you go.
okay. And
How do you feel when you look at that bridge?
I feel fine. I feel fine. It's I have closure.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. Let's see here. I'm just gonna get this going here, and we are recording. Let's see here. That up. Okay. Bear
Is this
with
blue
me.
shirt okay with the blue background?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's totally good. Just want to pull up my questions here.
So you like the film?
I love the film. It's very moving,
Thank
very
you.
powerful. Thank you for making it. I know it must have been really hard to do so.
Well, you know how it can be.
I do. I absolutely do. How are you doing these days?
Doing good. I think it's we're starting to get more people back to talking about this. I've done a bunch of podcasts and webinars the last couple of weeks.
Okay, good. So
And yeah,
well, you're making a big dent, making a big difference.
I hope to.
Okay. Here we go. I'm going to do an opening, and then we'll begin. Okay.
Yep,
All
I'm
right.
ready.
All right. What's cracking, Hope Nation? It's your friendly neighborhood Kevin Hines, and today I'm with a good friend of mine named Reid of ChooseLife.org, an amazing human being with a powerful story of hope and recovery and pain and struggle, and his loss of his son to suicide. We're going to talk about all things encompassing suicide prevention, how people can find the light at the end of the tunnel, and how one can get through the grief of losing someone they love so dearly to death by suicide from lethal emotional pain. So we're going to begin right now with a few questions to open it up, and it's going to be a wonderful conversation had by both of us to share with all of you in the hope that it helps one person change their decision and stay here, to be here tomorrow and every day after that. Hi, Jay. How are you?
Kevin, great to see you, man. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Glad to. It means the world to me that you said yes. So, Jay, the name of your film, your documentary, is Tell My Story. Can you just begin here now by telling us Ryan's story, by telling us your story? I want you to be free form, just say what's on your mind, break it down for us so we can learn from you and from your story.
Sure, Kevin. So Ryan, March 2018, March 21st, 2018, Ryan was 14 years of age. He turned 14 on March 7th. My wife and I were in Mexico celebrating her birthday. And we got a text from Ryan saying goodbye. Actually, I'm sorry, his birthday is March 14th. Sorry. But we got a text from Ryan saying goodbye. We both got text. We all got text. The whole family did. And we freaked out, obviously. And I'm calling the house, going, find Ryan, find Ryan. I'm talking to my mother-in-law. And they found him in the attic. Long story short, ambulance came, police came, tried to resuscitate him, took him down to San Diego, life flighted him down, put him in the hospital. And then Kim and I started the journey. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. We're trying to get out of Mexico, and it's just, you can't get out of Mexico at 1 o'clock in the morning. Finally got flights, you're like a zombie. going through the airport. We get back late on the 22nd, I guess it was, in the afternoon, and we go to talk to the doctors. And they did their best, but there was nothing they could do. And I think they kept him around on life support for us, but he didn't make it. So on the 26th, we took him off life support. So that's the quick story of what happened, but then the story afterwards is actually really much more important, because you see, I didn't see any of this. I didn't know that Ryan had any issues. I guess I was oblivious to it because I'm not a guy who ever suffered from depression. I never felt that way. And I'm a guy who showed up in a way, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a CEO, I built companies, I coach CEOs, I'm an Ironman, I'm a black belt, I've written 9 books or 8 books or something. I've done all this stuff, right? And I show up a certain way. I solve problems every day. I show up a certain way. I show up with a smile on my face and I get stuff done. And I don't really share the darker side of my life with anybody. So the fact that I failed at 13 businesses my kids never knew. The fact that I've almost been bankrupt my kids and wife never knew. So what Ryan saw in his life was a dad who showed up with having all of the answers, knowing everything's going to be okay, and just solving it all with a big smile on his face. So what Ryan assumed he would do was be the same way. But deep down inside, Ryan wasn't the same way.
Yeah.
Ryan was struggling with who he was, where he fit in, all this stuff that I didn't know about until I read his letters. But he would come out of his room every day, put a big smile on his face, and pretend everything was all right. And I didn't ask him if he really was okay, because I didn't know I should have. I didn't, with 4 kids, he was the least grumpy. And I never did a good job on checking on any of the mental health of any of my kids. I didn't think, it wasn't a thing I thought about. If they had the stomach flu or they broke an arm or whatever, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you're going to be all right. I never understood the level of anxiety my son was going through, the level of pain. And that's on me. I didn't ask. And when I was going through all this stuff, I found a note in his top left-hand drawer. You know, one said, it's a sticky note. One said, you know, here's my username and passwords. And the other one said, tell my story.
Wow.
Sorry, Kev.
Take your time.
No matter how often I tell this.
Yeah, of course. It's your son. It's your boy.
So I took that as I needed to tell a story. And so that's where the movie Tell My Story came from. It was supposed to premiere in March in theaters. And with COVID, it did not. So we're doing a online premiere. We're going to release it in September for Suicide Prevention Month. Okay. So through all this, I founded chooselife.org, which is, I guess, the old anti-abortion site that I repurposed because I didn't know it when I bought it. But I thought it's what I wanted kids to do and I wanted Ryan to do, is choose life. Yeah. And the mission of Choose Life is to end teen suicide by the year 2030. And people will say, well, you can't do that, Jay. You're not going to be able to accomplish that. And I'm like, well, maybe. But you know what? It didn't exist to the level it does now when I was a kid.
That's right.
I'm 53 this year. I was 13. I was Ryan's age that year before he died, a couple of weeks before he died. I didn't know what was going on in the world. I didn't care. I cared about going outside and playing with my friends and whatever went on at school. I didn't have this anxiety. Like kids today, Kevin, I mean, I can only imagine I actually know the anxiety levels that kids are going through right now as you and I are doing this podcast. They've got COVID. They've got the world's falling apart. Is there going to be a war? Who's going to be president? I didn't know any of those things. Yeah. And hence the anxiety levels were lower. The pressure as a kid did not exist for me, right? To get into the best school, to be at the top, get a 4 point, whatever they have to get these days without even paying attention. That pressure didn't exist 30 years ago. We've created it. All of the technology and everything they have to look at every day, and the bombardment of social media and the bullying. Man, my bullies stayed at school. When I was home, I was safe. That's not how it is these days. Your bully follows you home. He's in your room with you. And kids are mean. Mm. And they're meaner than they used to be, because you know what? The bullies, when I grew up, Kevin, when you grew up, the bullies were big guys who used that against me because I was a little guy. Now everybody can be a bully if they've got a keyboard. And for some reason, a lot of people think it's okay. So I'm babbling a bit here, but that's my free form.
No, you're not babbling at all. It's actually very pertinent to discuss these issues and these topics. And the way you're talking about it is crucial for parents to know what to look out for in their kids, and for kids to know what to look out for in the people that are coming out against them. I mean, you know, one of the biggest lessons I learned from your film, if I ever have kids, is to ask my kids if they love themselves. Do you love yourself every day, or do you have days where you hate yourself, loathe yourself, or feel terrible? You know, I attempted to take my life off the Golden Gate Bridge in the year 2000, and I nearly died, and my family nearly lost me, and my dad would have been in the same boat you are. And nobody asked me if I loved myself. I hated myself. I hated every fiber of my being for a very long time, and I still deal with self-loathing today, on and off. So, you know, asking that direct question is crucial. Another great lesson I learned from your film was, as you were sitting in the circular group with the other individuals in that large space, and you're talking about surviving loss and surviving attempts. And one of the biggest lessons I learned in that section of the film was that we need to stop normalizing the moodiness of our teenagers, and stop saying it's a phase and saying that it's hormones. But we need to recognize their struggles, accept them, and validate those struggles. But you don't know to do that if no one teaches you that it's not just supposed to be that way. And we have this kind of preconceived notion about teenagers that they're all going to be moody and they're all going through these periods. But in reality, they may be moody because of hormones. That may be a fact. But they've got all these bullies and cyberbullies coming at them that are affecting their moods on top of those hormones that are making them feel this incredible self-loathing. And they're looking in the mirror every day like I was, and they're saying, I hate you, you're useless, you're worthless, and you have no value. And that really, and just like Ryan hid it from you, Jay, I hid that from my father, who I was living with at the time. My parents divorced. So I was so moved by this film and so inspired by it. My next question, Jay, and this might be an obvious answer, but I want you to kind of get into it, is, you know, besides what happened to Ryan, what else inspired you to become a suicide prevention advocate, activist, and kind of mover and shaker?
I have to be honest, if it wasn't for Ryan, I wouldn't even think about it because I wouldn't know about it.
Okay.
And I think that once I got into it, though, I just started, after talking to all these kids as I filmed and going and speaking around the country, not probably as much as you do or used to do pre-COVID, but I was speaking around the country and different events. And I just see it now in people's eyes. Like it's like when I go and do an event, if 150 people show up at that event, they're not there because they want to be entertained. They're there because they're scared. And they're scared for their kids. And so I did an event up in Seattle back in February, and it was all elementary school parents. And they said, we want to do an event for elementary school parents. I'm like, okay, well, I think they'll show up. We can try it. They sold out at 150 parents. And these are parents of 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds who are like, legitimately, as we talk, and the Q&A went like an hour longer than it was supposed to. And I was great. Until they kick us out, we'll stay. But parents are afraid. And I think what's keeping me in this space because it's hard, right? You know how hard it is to be here. Like, you don't want to be here. There are more fun things to do with your life. But realizing that you have to make a difference, that someone has to get it through to parents, that they have to make a difference. Like, when the big thing I speak about is that if we're going to end teen suicide, we have to recognize who's going to do it. It's not the schools. It's not the government. It's not medical doctors. It's not therapists. Parents can end teen suicide. You have to own the mental health of your own children. I didn't. You need to. You have to. You have to check and ask, do they love themselves? You have to see what's going on in their heads. You have to go into their social media accounts and make sure they're okay and they're not being bullied. If they are being bullied, teach them how to deal with the bully. But you need to do all those things because that's how we stop suicide. We have to understand where our kids are really at.
It's a fact. I have a question about that tattoo on your arm. Tell the audience what Pitu Singe Bebe is, if I'm saying it right.
Pitu Singe Bebe, very good. Good memory. I was never a tattoo guy. In fact, I had a rule in the house that there's certain things you can't do in my house, and you're welcome to do them, but if you do them, then you're going to want a favor from me when you're older, and I'm not going to help you out, and you'll always want a favor from me. You'll want me to help you with whatever it might be. You're going to want a favor from me. So if you break my rules, you don't get it. There's no motorcycles, there's no tattoos, there's no hard drugs, there's no drinking and driving. There's not a lot. These are hard rules to not have, right? But those are the rules, and no weird piercings. Those are the rules. Things you will regret because I'm older and know you will regret them. Those are the rules. I was the first one to get a tattoo, and I got it in the film.
It's such a powerful moment.
So I'll tell you what it is, and you can see there. I guess you'll see it in the film. But so there's the old Mountain Dew commercial, Puppy Monkey Baby, which some of you may have seen. Is that puppy monkey baby creature who kind of laughs and giggles, is probably 5 or 6 years old, maybe longer. Anyways, Ryan and I were at the cottage a couple of years ago, and my nieces and nephews were playing that, and Ryan was laughing, and I was laughing at it. And then my nieces are French. They're in Quebec, and they said, "Oh, you got to watch it in French because in French it's Pitu Singe Bébé, is puppy monkey baby." So after we left the cottage, Ryan and I would text that back and forth to each other instead of saying, "I love you." Because to us, that meant "I love you." So I'd be traveling or he'd be at school, be Pitu Singe Bébé, and a little text. And that's our little thing. So the tattoo says Ryan, Pitu Singe Bébé, and 11:04 is the time I got his text.
Wow. Oh boy.
And yes, now there are a couple more tattoos in my house as my kids got to come. And I'm okay. You know?
Fair enough. Wow. I want to switch topics just for a moment and talk about the current pandemic we're experiencing. Over the last several years, we had an increase in suicide epidemic in the United States before the current pandemic. Why do you think that is? What is your opinion on the current rise in suicides and the continuous rise in suicides?
So I think my answer is probably the same as a lot of people who have been in the space and studied the space as you have. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I'm not a therapist. I'm a dad who lost his kid, who has dug into the space and have my own opinions as to how we got here. But I'll tell you what I think. We got here because as a family unit, we were no longer connected to the same way we used to be. This little device and all the little apps that are on it have meant that we no longer see each other eye to eye anymore. Families, instead of watching each other, talking to each other, hanging out with each other, will sit at the dinner table all on their phones. That never happened when I grew up. Probably didn't happen when you grew up. We sat around the table and everybody talked. We spent Sundays together playing board games. If we watched a movie, we didn't all watch individual movies on our own iPhones. We all watched the same movie, and it was usually a Disney movie. So that's how it used to be, and how it is now is completely different. So, and I'm not saying anything that other people aren't saying, but when you get kids, when I interview kids in the film, and I ask them simple questions like, so tell me about Instagram and social media. All the kids who had attempted will tell you that it's a horrible place. Because when they go there, they see everyone else's life as being perfect, because that's how the pictures show up. And for those that are anxious or depressed or feel self-loathing, that just exacerbates their feelings about how they feel about this. So everyone else's life is perfect and my life is horrible. And it exacerbates the problem and makes it worse. I don't think kids should be able to be on social media at the ages of 12, 13, 14 years of age. I don't think kids should have a phone with unlimited access to the internet at 12, 13, 14 years of age. And I'll tell you why. I gave Ryan complete access to the internet on his phone. Because Ryan was a straight A kid, never did anything wrong. He was perfect. There was no issues with Ryan that I could ever see. And he wanted a phone. His friend said phones. I'm like, have a phone. I never thought about what he might be going and researching on his phone. He didn't have social media, by the way. I think he had a Facebook account because I would post dinner conversations that we would laugh at, right? But he didn't have a lot of friends on Facebook. He didn't care about social media. But he had his phone and he was on it constantly. And he would watch kids play video games, which is something I don't understand, but people do that, I guess. They watch other people play video games.
Yeah.
He'd watch people do Minecraft stuff, and which I guess I'm okay with. A lot of YouTube, he'd just be on it constantly. And I guess I got to the point where I'm like, I guess I'm just old and don't understand. Like, I did other stuff. I guess that's what the generation does and all that kind of stuff. I justified it in my head. But here's what he really did at night. When I was in bed and he was under the sheets with his phone, he was researching how to kill himself. So when you think about, and I know this because he wrote in his letter, all the different ways he researched. That's all online. And when you think about all the terrible things on the internet, I don't think we think about how bad it really is and how deep and dark it really goes. And that if you allow your kid at 12 and 13 years of age, like I did, to have unlimited access to the world, it's a scary world.
Absolutely.
They don't need unlimited access to it. And I gave it to all my kids. And I'm paying the price because I did. So how did we get here? Well, when I was 13, I was not mentally capable of dealing with all the anxious feelings that are going on in the world. There's no way I would be able to deal with this. When you look at COVID, when you look at the news, the level of, I'm not a guy who gets anxious. I'm getting anxious myself these days. When I'm watching the news, I'm like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Where's it going to go next? What's going to happen? Are we going to be okay? I'm getting that way. I've never been that way in my life. And I'm pretty good about logically going through stuff, and I'll do my research. I'll see, okay, that article's wrong. This guy's not right. I'm going to go down this way. I'm going to follow science, right? That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to make sure the science I follow. What's that?
We're being bombarded with it every single day, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and it's scary, right? And some of the stuff is BS and some of it isn't, but even the real stuff is scary.
Yeah. I
have a hard time figuring that out. A 13-year-old kid right now, watching the world, watching our president, watching the guy running for president, I don't think you can feel that great about either one of those characters. And they're going, oh my gosh. And then there's a bombing over here, and there's a war going to start over there. And then, and let's not forget the planet's going to all die in 20 years anyway. So, I mean, imagine being a 13-year-old kid. If you can look back to being a 13-year-old kid now,
yeah,
and that's what you're seeing every day, and that's what you're thinking about. And then you're not feeling good about yourself either. And then you go, and your parents ask you how you're doing, and what do you say? You say, I'm fine. Fine does not mean good, does not mean great. It is one step above, I'm in a horrible spot, but I don't want to tell you. We need to talk to our kids now. If you have not had the conversations about, hey, how do you feel about what's going on in the world? Are you watching the news? Are you reading the news? They probably are. What do you think about the news? And don't tell them it's all going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Because they don't want to hear that. They want to have an honest conversation where maybe you say, I don't really know. Let's watch it together. Let's read it together. Let's research it together. Let's have the conversation together.
Mm. One of the things you had in the film when you went to visit Didi Hirsch, and I think it was Lynn Morris of Didi Hirsch, talked about how the youngest person to contact the crisis line was 8 years of age, and how more and more 8, 9-year-olds are talking about it. And she mentioned that, we think that our children can't feel suicidal ideation, can't feel that much pain, but they can, they do, they have, and they've died. And so, you talk about, what your son went through and what your family went through, but this is something that is going on all around the world every single day. And your film makes that utterly clear. I'm wondering now, on the opposite side of that, what in your mind would motivate people to embrace life even in times of this kind of suicidal crisis? What is it that the general population can do to reach someone in that desperate pain, in your opinion today, having gone through what you went through?
Again, I'm not an expert, but I'll tell you what I've learned. Being inside in your room with your phone or your computer constantly is not healthy. Get outside. Go for a walk. Play ball. Be a kid. It's not connected to your phone. Do something creative. Learn an instrument. It's hard. It's not easy. Learn how to play guitar? Not easy. I played for 35 years and not easy. But you know what? It's one of those things you'll love that you had when you're older. I hated guitar lessons when I was 13 years old. I'm glad I play now. Read. Get off the computer. Get off your phone. Hang out with your parents, with your family. If you're going to be on your computer, make sure it's a Zoom call with your friends and have a conversation with them. But you've got to do something else than just stare at your computer all day. And moving, I mean, Kevin, you know this. It's when you start moving, you start walking, you start running, you start being physically active. It releases endorphins in your mind. You feel better.
Naturally.
You feel better naturally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of the time, from my understanding from talking to kids, is that you'll get into this really dark spot. And it can happen like you keep going this way to a bad spot, or if you just change your situation and you go outside for a walk, it's enough to take you just a little bit up again. Right? You go hug you get a hug from somebody, an 8-second hug.
An 8-second hug. That's right.
Colin Karshner, right? 8-second hug 8 times a day.
Save our kids, right? Or save the kids.
I did a webinar with Colin just a couple of days ago.
Oh, fantastic! I was about to ask you about that, about Save the Kids and Colin and his program. Can you tell me more about it?
Colin Karshner did Save the Kids is Colin. He did a TED Talk that went viral. He did a fantastic job about the evils of social media and cell phones. But he does it in such a way that kids love to watch him and listen to him. Even though he's like, put your cell phones down, turn off Instagram. But they just love him because he's really entertaining. Like we always joke because we speak together a fair amount. And I'm like, yeah, Colin's fun. I'm not. Right? Colin's really fun. Kids love him. I'm not fun. I'm scary. Right? But Colin speaks around the country. Like prior to COVID, he was speaking 5 days a week, 4 times a day at different school districts. He's booked solidly through 2021. Wow. And he has an amazing, I mean, if you've not seen his TED Talk, you have to see his TED Talk. He's in our film too. And he's a good buddy. We've become buddies over the last little while because we speak together, we hang out, and he's just a great, great guy. Yeah. And he should be on your podcast.
Oh, I'd love that. If you can make the introduction, I'd be great.
I'll connect you guys for sure.
Wonderful. He talks about the prefrontal cortex and how these tech billionaires made sure that dopamine is being flooded to the brain during all these activities on Instagram and social media and the internet, in what you're doing. You're just getting that feeling. Dr. Mark Golston, who you had on the film, also talked about that. Just, you know, can you tell us more about the effects of social media on the brain that you're aware of?
Well, again, I think it comes down to the thing that people aren't aware of is the big video game manufacturers. When they're making a game, what's that one that everybody's on that's online?
Fortnite.
Fortnite employs psychologists.
Yep.
To make sure that the game is as addictive as possible so people want to be on it.
What blows my mind is how a psychologist can take that job, given what they do for a living. And the only thing that comes to mind that makes them take that job is money. Is the ability to come up in the world, but you're selling your soul. In my mind, you know, it's you're selling your soul, and you're making a product that is damaging children's minds. And I do have to say, I agree with you in the idea that 13 and 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds should not be given free access to all the internet has to offer. It is very dangerous because their minds aren't fully developed yet. Their brains aren't fully developed yet. Your brain's not fully developed until you're 25 plus years of age, and we are giving them unfiltered access to the world, even the darker parts of the world. And that is not okay for the developing mind to grow properly, to build positive and good decision-making. You know, sitting around all day playing a game where you're shooting and killing another entity is not a positive attribute that can be attributed to anybody. It's not good for you. And yet we have grown to be a society that is okay with it.
And I got to admit, I let Ryan play Call of Duty. I played Call of Duty with him. The zombie part of Call of Duty was fun.
Sure.
But you know what? I think it's even changed since Call of Duty, because once these online games like Fortnite came on, there's something that just drags you in there to want. You're going to play it for 12, 14 hours a day, and they do, right?
Yeah.
Brad Huxtable lost his son 2 months ago. HaydensCorner.org or .com, one of the two. But Hayden's Corner. Hayden was 12. He was at home because of COVID, playing Fortnite constantly. He made a mistake and threw he broke his monitor somehow. Freaked out and killed himself.
Wow. My God.
At 12 years of age.
My God.
Now, I'm not saying that's Fortnite's problem.
No. Yeah.
Or they're responsible for it. But I'm going to say, guys, what are you doing to give back, to do something for the mental health of the kids that are playing your game? Do you feel any sense of responsibility? Like, is there somewhere in that game? Maybe there is, because I don't know, right? Is there somewhere I can click a button and say, hey, I need some help, and you'll connect me with a therapist or give me the number or something? Do you guys do enough?
I would say doubtful, but there needs to be.
I mean, if there is one, Hayden didn't see it.
Yeah.
So are you guys doing enough? Because you're making enough money. Are you doing enough?
That's right. You bet.
Is Instagram doing enough? Is Facebook doing enough? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I mean, why is it that I got Ryan on Facebook because you know how easy it is to get on Facebook? I go ahead and say, oh, all you do is change the date so it looks like you're older. I taught him that. Every kid does that. Why is it that Facebook allows you to have an account and does not verify your age in any way? Why is that okay?
Because they just want more users. They just want more users. They want more people to be addicted to their platform.
And Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all of them. Snapchat, man, to allow a child on Snapchat where I can say whatever I want, then it disappears. Like, wow. If someone explain to me the purpose and be able to send a message that disappears, that doesn't have a nefarious tone to it. I like Facebook because I'm journaling my life. Here's all the stuff that happened in my life, and it's there forever.
There's benefits to it.
And I'm a Facebook fan, or I used to be. I'll be honest with you. After 10 years, I had to go off of Facebook 2 days ago.
Yeah.
It just has become an unhealthy place.
Yeah.
I had to shut it off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, man, if you ask me, how do we solve it? I keep coming back to Kevin. As parents, we have to own the mental health of our kids.
Mm-hmm.
You can't wait for someone else to do it. You've got to ask your kids how they're doing. You've got to find a way to have a conversation with them. Barging into their room and saying, "Hey, talk to me," isn't going to do it. Stay out of their space, but take them for a walk. Not every video game is bad, and every video game isn't bad. Like small moderation, sure, an hour here, an hour there, whatever. But know what your kids are doing.
Yeah. I think that one of the things we know today is that neuropsychiatric disorders are the leading cause of disability in the U.S. Depression is a leading cause of disability worldwide. We need to reach out to people in pain, even people who aren't visibly in pain. We need to reach out and ask them the direct questions. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made a plan to take your life? How can I help you get past a hard day today? We need to create a more inclusive culture as a society, and we need to recognize the woes of the technological age and how they can be damaging to our kids. I think that's something that we can all benefit from and learn from in your film. I loved when you talked in the film with Peter Mayfield of Whole Hearts, Mind, and Bodies, the Gateway Mountain Center. Can you talk about his center and the work he's doing and your connection with him?
I love Peter, and the day I spent with him was something that was very special. And he takes therapy to a whole different level, because it's not just I think one of the challenges we have is that there's not enough good therapists and there's not enough therapists. Yeah. And sometimes it's like you're going to talk to somebody for an hour and then you won't talk to them for 3 or 4 weeks. And maybe you connected with them, maybe you didn't. We can talk about that in a second. But what Peter does is he takes the toughest cases, the kids who are in the worst spots. In the hospitals are saying, this kid's in a really bad spot. And his people will go and they'll be with them. And they'll just hang out with them. And they'll be friends with them. And they're going to take them out and they're going to take them hiking. They're going to take them to do activities. They're going to get them out into the world. Peter's real message is you got to get moving. Yeah. Get your body moving. Get your mind moving. Be unstuck. And that's what he does. That's what his group does. And they have tremendous success. But you know what? His people aren't all trained therapists. They're just people who care.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Sometimes it's the peer people that we need the most. Sometimes it's not the person with the degree. It's the person with the lived expertise and the lived experience that we need to talk to get through the day. And
that's, Kevin, when I watched your film, and it was a couple of years ago I watched it, because I watched it right after Ryan. One of the messages I got from that is that when you were standing on that bridge, it's just, if someone had just taken the time to care, it might have changed your mind.
Yeah.
But no one stopped to care. And that to me was like, people want to be cared for. And what I found from people when I talked to them is the same thing I got out of your movies. Like, if I ask you how you're doing and you say you're not doing good, and the next message, words out of my mouth, have you thought about harming yourself? And parents are afraid to say that, because they'll say to me, I don't want to put those words in my kid's head. And I'm going, those thoughts are already in your kid's head. And if you bring them up, they're going to go, oh, please, thank you. Let's talk about it.
It gives them permission to speak about their pain. That's right. You're absolutely right.
And that's what they want. They want to, like, if someone had to come to you and said, hey, dude, what are you doing?
Mm.
you would have stopped and thought about it and said something. You said it in your movie, right? It's like I just need somebody to care
Yeah.
at that moment. And by the way, this isn't, just so we're all clear, what Kevin and I are talking about isn't just kids. This
No,
is
it
everybody today,
runs the gamut of ages. Yeah, you're right.
especially with this pandemic. I mean, I see it in people's faces. I'm on Zoom calls all day long and I'm talking to people, and I've seen people go like this over the last 60, 90 days. People used to be really high and happy, and I'm like, ooh, I got to check in on you.
Yeah.
Because I see it in their eyes. I hear it in their voices. They're struggling.
Yeah.
Your friends are struggling. You've got to talk to your friends. You got to talk to your spouses, talk to your neighbors. Not in large groups, though, small groups.
You bet. Can you tell us about your friendship with Dr. Mark Golston and the work he's doing in suicide prevention? I'd love to hear about that.
Well, you and Mark did a great documentary together too.
Yeah, we did.
And he loves you. He thinks the world of you, as you know. Mark has become a buddy, a friend, a mentor, someone I can go to advice. He spent, I can't remember, is it 40 years in psychotherapy and being,
Yeah.
and he used to take the worst of the worst cases out of UCLA when they didn't know what to do with them. They would call Dr. Mark up and say, this person's in really, really bad shape, and you're the only person we can refer him to.
Mm.
And in all his 25, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, I can't remember, because I just can't remember, of doing that kind of work, he never lost a single patient. And that's rare. It's so rare. He is, in this space, one of the smartest guys I've ever met about how to talk to kids. When you watch my movie, especially the part that Dr. Mark and I did together about his 7 words,
Yep.
it's so powerful. You want to know how to talk to your kids? 7 words. Watch. You can Google Dr. Mark Golston, get 7 words, and you can watch our film. But that man, I mean, I've had the pleasure of speaking in a whole bunch of different places with him. We'll go together, and he'll speak and I'll speak. And I learn something from him every time I talk to him. I think he's one of the most underrated people in this space because he's got one of the best messages.
Wow. You shared with Dr. Golston, Mark, you shared with him that you broke your arm out of rage. In the film, I remember there was a piece of the film, not to give away too many spoilers, but there's a piece of the film where you have a cast over your, I think it's your right arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that part first. My immediate thought, and I don't know why I thought this, was because maybe because of your nature and the way you speak and your mannerisms, but we don't know each other that well, but I'm fascinated by your story and your efforts and your work in suicide prevention and what you've been through and what you're doing to help other people. But when I saw the cast before you talked to Mark in the scene before that, I thought, I wonder if you broke that by hitting a wall or something like that. That was the first thought in my mind. And I think I thought that because when I was in my first psychiatric hospital or third psychiatric hospital after my attempt,
yeah.
I remember punching the wall, being so angry at my life, at my situation, the fact that I was locked up, and I was punching the wall till my hand bled, and I busted 2 of my knuckles. I mean, I just shattered them. My immediate thought when I saw that was, did he do that to himself? And then here we are, you're in a few scenes later, you're talking to Dr. Mark Golston, and you tell him what happened to your hand. So can you break that down? And I mean,
I'm embarrassed about what happened to my hand. So.
It might be embarrassing, but it's important for people to understand. He asked you the question, what was your emotion of those 7 things? Lonely, depressed, depraved, what was your emotion? And you said anger. Can you just talk about that? Because I think it's important for parents to hear this.
So I broke my hand. I was up at the cottage with my brother-in-law and my brother. We've been drinking. It was just about a year ago. And one of them said something. It wasn't anywhere intentionally bad against Ryan or anything else or me. I just snapped because I heard something that wasn't said. And I slammed my fist on that table, which was a really thick table, as hard as I possibly could. And I busted my hand completely. I was angry. In fact, when I look back on myself during that time, I've calmed down. The last year. That first year, man, I was angry. I was angry at myself, mostly. I had bouts of being angry with Ryan, angry at the world. I had a hair trigger. I had a fuse that could go off really quickly and easily. I'm lucky I didn't get in some really bad fight with somebody because I was just looking for somebody to kick the crap out of. And I've never done that in my life, but that's how I felt. I just wanted to unleash my anger on something. And I think that night I unleashed my anger on that table. And that was probably a turning point, making me realize that, holy cow, Jay, you're not going down the right path you're in.
Yeah.
So I doubled down on my therapy. so now even now I've got someone who I talk to pretty much, twice a week and text all week long, because it's, being in the space and living with the stuff I live with, you need to have somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing for everybody to realize is, look, I was that macho guy who did all this stuff and had a degree of success that a lot of people want. I don't think it's that special, but other people do. I never thought I needed to talk to anybody. I thought therapy was for people who had problems. As I've learned in this time is that, you know what? We should all have someone to talk to the same as way having a trainer in the gym is better than not having a trainer in the gym. Right? I mean, it's having don't think of it as a therapist, think of it as a coach. You're always better with a coach. If you want to get better at a sport, have a coach, right? Having a mental health coach is important, I think, I would say for everybody. Having someone who's in your corner, but unbiased to talk to about what's going through your head, I found is extremely, extremely helpful. And I wish that we could all get to the point where we could have our own coach.
I love that. Because I feel the same way. And when you have people to talk to that support you in your times of pain, you can be more resilient in the face of them. And that's one thing you talked about in the film as well. You talked about this lack of resiliency amongst our kids, and how we can teach resiliency, because we're not necessarily going to eradicate bullying, but we have to teach people how to be resilient in the face of that bullying, in the face of that pain, so they can survive it. I think that's really something that parents are not taught to do. I'm of the opinion that doctors who see parents who are about to have a child should educate them about mental health and suicide before that child is born. I'm also of the opinion that children should be educated about mental, brain, mind, behavioral health and spiritual health from the age of 4th grade on up.
I agree.
So that by the time they hit 16, 17, 18, 13, 14, 15, and they have that depressive episode, they know who to talk to about it and who to turn to immediately, and they know not to keep it inside. That's the one thing I think we have lost as a society, is this idea that our children aren't vulnerable when they're young. We have to say, okay, they're 8, 9, and 10. They need to learn about mental health because they have a brain and its capacity is one that can comprehend what mental health is. If they can understand what the definition is, they need to learn about how to battle it. For mental health.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important at this point to actually mention something else, that not every kid is going to try and kill themselves.
Fair enough.
So you have to build some resiliency in children, which we're not doing as much as we used to, right?
Right.
The hot lava talk is a Tedx talk I did back in November, which has got a lot of play, and talks about what it was like growing up as I was a kid versus what it's like now, and how we try to protect our kids from all the stuff that my parents never protected me from, right? And I'm talking about the simple stuff. We protect them from, you got a bad grade and it must be the teacher's fault. No, you got a bad grade because you didn't study, and maybe you should study, right? I'm not going to go fight the teacher for you, right? You fell and skinned your knee, so maybe you shouldn't ride a bike anymore. No, maybe you should just skin your knee more often and it won't bother you so much.
Or wear knee pads.
Or wear knee pads. Exactly. Or you know what? When you break up with someone, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, yeah, it's going to hurt. And that's okay. And you're going to be okay eventually. But it's okay to hurt right now. Yeah. As parents, and I think this is the danger zone, right? Is that we talk all this stuff about how you've got to own your kids' mental health and you got to do all these things to protect them and make sure, but you've got to do it in such a way that they're still learning that pain is a part of life.
They've also got to learn on their own, right? They can't just learn everything from you.
Yeah, they've got to, you can't learn it all from you, and they got to learn. It's okay to feel. It's the most important thing I think we could teach our kids is pain's temporary. There's not a time in our lives where that worst moment doesn't change and become a different day. Mm. And that's what I think that my minimal understanding of people who are depressed is they don't think it'll ever change. They think every day is going to be the same.
Yeah.
Right? They think they're going to feel this way forever.
Right.
And some of us just go, no, I'm feeling this way now, but when I wake up in the morning, it'll probably be completely different. And I think that's the best. And you better be careful how you deliver this message, because if you preach to your kids and tell them everything's going to be all right, don't worry about it, they're not going to listen to you.
No. They're not going to believe you.
No, they're not going to believe you. I mean, I like to say, and Kev, you'll understand this better than most, is that on the brightest, sunniest day, I can see all sun and no clouds, but if you're depressed, all you see is clouds. You just don't see the world the same way. And I can talk to you all I want about it. You're not going to see it the same way. I can't convince you. I can hug you and I can love you and let you know it's going to be all right, but I can't convince you it's a sunny day. I mean, is that right? That's
correct. I'm in total agreement. Look behind me on this, you know, the background there with the sun and the horizon. It's beautiful, but if I'm on that bridge like I was that day, in desperate pain, ready to attempt because I believe I'm worthless, that sun's not going to keep me there.
No.
That's, you know, but
you're not seeing the beauty.
No, you're not seeing the beauty. You're only seeing the pain. And that's what we need to do, is teach our kids how to balance the pain, understand that it's going to happen to us on a regular basis. It's inevitable, but suffering is optional. You don't have to suffer with that pain. You can thrive in spite of that pain if you have the understanding that your mental health is something that can be changed. It can be augmented for the better, for you to feel better, do better, and be better. My last question, final question, is what words of hope can you offer to those people in pain right now who may be considering suicide, young or old alike? What does J. Reid say to someone going through it to help keep them here on this planet?
I think the only thing I can say is that you may not feel like it, and I now understand that. And you may not want to hear this, but try to listen. You are loved. Your parents love you. Your friends love you. They might get mad at you. They might say things you don't like, but they love you. They would miss you. And you may not see it right now, but we all have special gifts that we're supposed to use when we're here. You may have not found yours yet, but you will. But if you're not here, you'll never find it. You're here for a reason, and eventually you'll find out what that reason is. Take the time. You're loved. And if you feel this way right now, please tell someone so we can get you some help. Because it's not, you're sick at the moment, the same way as if you had the flu. You just need some help. And people want to help you.
You're here for a reason. You're beautiful just as you are. Suicide is never the answer to the problem. It is the problem. Be Here Tomorrow, and every single day after that. Jay, from the bottom of my heart, from my gut, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you and all your efforts, and your film is beautiful. I can't wait for people to see it. How can people reach you today or through your organization? How can people get out to you?
If you go to chooselife.org, there's a contact page on there. You go to j@chooselife.org. It's my email address. And thank you. We've got another program coming out in the fall we're going to take the film, and it's now 90 minutes as a theatrical release. And I'm putting together a program where it'll be 50 minutes long. We'll be able to show it. PTAs will be able to show it at schools, virtually, I guess, in the fall. And then we'll have mental health professionals from the local community talking about what they saw in that film. So the film will be slightly different than how you see the theatrical release now. It's going to be more prescriptive. Here's how you talk to your kids. Here's the things you want to go do now. So it's going to be advice for parents on how to talk to the kids. Dr. Mark will be in it. Colin will be in it again. We're reshooting them in the next couple of weeks so we can piece this thing together with combination of some of my TED Talks, the movie, and new footage so that we have a event for schools to show to parents.
Oh, fantastic. Jay, thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Be well, and be here tomorrow.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, buddy.